It really doesn't matter, actually, you know. I know that what I did well, you know, and how close I was. So I don't...
It's really impressive, I must admit, and it's amazing for the game. I think that they play back to back to back to back.
Imagine being hailed as the savior of your sport, a walking work of art, a genius whose talent seems to flow not from sweat and muscle, but from a divine source. You are loved by millions, adorned with every trophy, and celebrated as the perfect gentleman. But what if, behind the closed doors of the locker room, that perfection bred something else? What if the very effortlessness that made you a global icon made you an object of frustration, resentment, and quiet animosity among the very rivals who shared the court with you? This is the story of how tennis's most beloved champion, Roger Federer, became one of its most quietly resented. Roger Federer. The name is synonymous with tennis. It evokes images of grace, class, and a seemingly unbreakable composure. For over 2 decades, he wasn't just a player. He was an ambassador, a global brand, the man who elevated tennis to an art form. His 20 Grand Slam titles and record-breaking weeks at #1 are just statistics. His real legacy is the way he played, a sublime, fluid dance that made one of the most physically demanding sports on earth look easy. But that's the illusion, isn't it? The illusion of ease. And in the world of professional sports, where athletes bleed and grind for every single point, easy can be a dirty word. While fans saw a demigod, many of his peers saw something different. They saw an anomaly they couldn't understand, a puzzle they couldn't solve. And for some, that admiration curdled into a unique form of professional jealousy. To understand how the most popular player in history could be so polarizing to his rivals, we have to go back to a time when he was anything but perfect. A time when the Maestro was just a hot-headed, temperamental kid with a racket he couldn't stop breaking. Born in Basel, Switzerland, Roger Federer was a prodigious talent from the start. Coaches saw it instantly. The hand-eye coordination, the natural timing, the effortless generation of pace. But they also saw a volcano of emotion. Young Roger was a perfectionist, and when he failed to live up to his own impossible standards, he would erupt. Rackets were smashed, insults were hurled at umpires, and his parents were often embarrassed to watch his matches. He was a tempest of talent and temper. Many of his early contemporaries, like Marat Safin and Lleyton Hewitt, were also fiery characters, but they channeled their aggression into a gritty, combative style of play. They wore their effort on their sleeves. Federer was different. His outbursts felt like a betrayal of his own elegant game. The talent was undeniable, but the mentality was a liability. He was stuck in the ATP's second tier, a player who could produce moments of magic but would crumble under pressure. The whispers in the locker room weren't about his genius. They were about his weakness. He was seen as mentally fragile, a head case who would never fulfill his potential. The turning point came in 2001. A 19-year-old Federer, ponytail and all, walked onto center court at Wimbledon to face the king Pete Sampras. Sampras was on a 31-match winning streak at the All England club. Nobody gave the Swiss kid a chance. In a 5-set epic that signaled a changing of the guard, Federer won. It was a victory that announced his arrival. 2 years later, in 2003, he would return to that same court and lift the Wimbledon trophy, his first Grand Slam title. The raw talent had been harnessed. The emotional volcano had been capped. The world saw the birth of a champion, but his peers, the ones who knew the fiery racket-smashing kid he used to be, watched with a sense of wary disbelief. The gentleman had arrived, but they remembered the brat. After his 2003 Wimbledon breakthrough, Federer didn't just win, he conquered. From 2004 to 2007, he was a tennis deity, winning 11 of a possible 16 Grand Slam titles. He made the extraordinary look routine. His rivals weren't just being beaten. They were being systematically dismantled by a style of tennis nobody had ever seen before. He floated across the court while they lunged. He flicked his wrist for a winner while they grunted and strained. And this is where the conflict began. It wasn't overt hatred. It was something more insidious. The resentment of the artisan towards the artist. Players like Andy Roddick, a powerhouse with one of the greatest serves in history, were left utterly demoralized. After losing the 2004 Wimbledon final, a shell-shocked Roddick famously said, "I threw the kitchen sink at him, but he went to the bathroom and got his bathtub." This quote perfectly captures the sentiment. How do you compete with someone who doesn't seem to be playing the same game? While Roddick and others were playing tennis, Federer appeared to be playing a different sport entirely, one without sweat, struggle, or doubt. The criticism, subtle at first, began to surface. Some players and pundits labeled his dominance as boring. Marat Safing once quipped that he hoped Federer would lose just to make things more interesting. The underlying message was clear. His perfection was sterile. It lacked the human drama of a visible struggle. Fans adored the elegance, but for his peers, that elegance felt like a quiet insult. It implied that their hard work, their grit, their sweat-soaked efforts were somehow less sophisticated, less worthy. He was winning, but he wasn't grinding in a way they could respect. He was an artist in an arena of gladiators, and the gladiators were growing tired of being his canvas. Then came Rafael Nadal. If Federer was ethereal grace, Nadal was terrestrial force, a whirlwind of topspin, muscle, and relentless intensity. He was everything Federer wasn't: a ferocious, physical warrior who left every ounce of himself on the court. And he was the perfect antidote to Federer's game. Suddenly the Maestro looked human. Nadal didn't just beat Federer on clay. He challenged him everywhere, culminating in the epic 2008 Wimbledon final, widely considered the greatest match ever played. As darkness fell on center court, Federer's reign of invincibility was shattered. The public narrative immediately shifted. Nadal became the symbol of hard work and passion, while Federer, in contrast, was framed as the effortless talent. This narrative was a double-edged sword. It acknowledged his genius, but subtly discredited the immense work that went into it. The public scrutiny intensified. Every loss was overanalyzed. Was he declining? Was he mentally tough enough to handle Nadal's onslaught? The perception of him as a flawless champion began to crack. This period took a significant toll. For years, Federer had been the undisputed king. Now he had a rival who not only beat him, but who the public and media championed as the more relatable, more human champion. The quiet resentment in the locker room now had a public face. Fans took sides. You were either a Fed fan or a Rafa fan. The sport became a binary choice between art and effort, grace and grit. Federer found himself on the defensive, not just on the court, but in the court of public opinion. He lost the support of the narrative. No longer was he just the brilliant champion. He was now one half of a rivalry, and for many, he was the less compelling, less sympathetic half. The artist for the first time was being told his art wasn't enough. Losing his #1 ranking and facing a rival he couldn't consistently solve could have broken him. Many thought the Federer's era was over, but instead of fading away, he did something no one expected. The artist learned to become a fighter. This marked the most critical transformation of his career. The change wasn't just about his game, it was about his entire persona. He had to kill the myth of effortless genius to survive. He publicly acknowledged the need to work harder, to get stronger. He retooled his game, working with new coaches like Paul Annacone and, later, Stefan Edberg to incorporate more aggressive net-rushing tactics. He understood that he couldn't just out-rally the new generation of powerful baseliners. He had to shorten the points to take the fight to them. This was a conscious decision to shed the skin of the elegant counterpuncher and become a ruthless aggressor. But the biggest change was mental. The realization came that his legacy wouldn't be defined by perfection, but by resilience. He had to embrace the struggle. The very thing his style had seemed to reject for so long. He had to learn to love the grind. This wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about proving to himself and to his doubters that there was steel beneath the silk. The kid who once broke rackets out of frustration had transformed into a man who now used that frustration as fuel. He was no longer just playing tennis. He was solving a problem. The problem was his own perceived limitations, and the turning point was coming, a moment that would redefine his career and silence the critics for good. The stage was the 2017 Australian Open final. It was a script no one could have written. Roger Federer, aged 35, was returning from a 6-month injury layoff. He was seated 17th. Across the net stood his greatest nemesis, Rafael Nadal. Everyone saw it as a beautiful, nostalgic final. One last dance for the old kings before the new guard took over. No one gave Federer a real chance, especially not in a 5-set war against Nadal. For 4 sets, it was a classic, a brutal seesaw battle. Then in the 5th and final set, Federer went down a break, 3-1 Nadal. It was over. The familiar narrative was playing out. Federer's elegance would ultimately yield to Nadal's relentless will. The artist would fall to the warrior. But then something happened. The transformation that had been years in the making was finally unleashed. Federer didn't just fight back. He went on the attack. He unleashed a barrage of blistering backhands. A shot that had been his weakness against Nadal for a decade, now transformed into a lethal weapon. He played with a controlled fury no one had seen from him before. He won 5 straight games, breaking Nadal twice to serve for the championship. On his second championship point, a forehand clipped the line, a challenge was called. The stadium held its breath. The replay showed the ball was in. Federer leaped into the air, a roar of pure, unadulterated emotion erupting from him. It was more than a victory, it was vindication. He had beaten his arch-rival in a Grand Slam final, at an age when most players are long retired, by reinventing his game and embracing the fight. For the first time, the critics were silent. The narrative of talent versus effort was obliterated. In that moment, he proved that his art was not effortless. It was the result of relentless work, intelligence, and an unbreakable will to win. The public perception shifted for good. He was no longer just the graceful maestro. He was the resilient warrior. Today, Roger Federer's place in the pantheon of sports is secure. But his legacy is far more complex than just trophies and records. He stands as a symbol of resilience, a testament to the power of evolution. The early resentment from his peers stemmed from a misunderstanding of his genius. They saw the result, not the process. They saw the swan gliding on the water, but they didn't see the frantic paddling happening underneath. His journey proved that innovation can be mistaken for arrogance, and that grace can be misread as a lack of effort. But the question remains, was Roger Federer's beautiful, seemingly effortless dominance a golden age for tennis? Or did his impossible standard create a shadow so large that it unfairly diminished the incredible achievements of the gladiators who fought beside him? Is he a hero of the sport, or a beautiful anomaly who never truly fit the mold of a conventional fighter? Federer's story isn't just about winning and losing. It's about the eternal debate between talent and toil, and the refusal to be defined by anyone else's expectations. Was his path the right one, or simply his own? Perhaps in the end, that's what makes a legend. What do you think of Roger Federer's journey? Was the early resentment from his peers justified, or was it simply a product of his unparalleled genius? Did his late career transformation make you see him in a new light? We'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below. This story is just one of many complex legacies in the world of sports. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next video, where we explore the most fascinating figures in the game. Thanks for watching.